Well, we got a special guest on the phone with me. I think the world of this guy, and I've known him for a long time. And actually, our families are kind of connected from the past, and I used to follow his career. Bobby Courtney, longtime quarterback with the Girard Indians, and then on to YSU. How you doing, Bobby?
Great, John. Yourself?
Absolutely great. And I saw you at Greenwood Chevrolet a couple times, so you're a customer out there as well, which is
Absolutely.
good.
Absolutely.
Not mine, though, Bob. I don't know what's up with that. Hey, I have to laugh about it. Bobby, let's talk about your days growing up as a youngster in Girard. And, we've had Pat Pearson on. We had Nick Cochran on. And Pat Meyer was on. And it just so happens to be a Girard camaraderie lately. But Bobby Courtney was one, too. It was a special community to grow up in as a youngster, was it not?
Absolutely. I was thinking about that since we talked about coming on the show. And, one thing I was very lucky, and most of us, from Girard, we always had great coaches. The guys that coached us in Little League, Pony League, youth basketball, youth football. We had a lot of coaches that were determined to win games, and we went to practice every day, worked hard every day. We had fun because we were with our friends and all that stuff, but most of the time, it was about getting better and winning games. And, I think that had a lot to do with a lot of people's success in Girard because, they kind of expect to win there. Even high school now, they were at state a couple years ago. Nick runs the programs. They're determined to win, and they run it the right way and they do things the right way. So, lets people become very successful.
Bobby Courtney, when did you realize you wanted to be a quarterback? Did you play for the Girard Little Indians as a youngster or no?
Absolutely. I kind of got lucky there. I tried out for quarterback at first, and then I got moved to running back. And then John Geyer was the starting quarterback for the first 5 games when we were 9 years old, the very first year of Girard Little Indians. He came to practice one day, said he was hurt, couldn't practice. Skeeter Harrison, who's another, Harrison's a famous name in Girard, he was the coach. He said, "Okay, Courtney, you're back at quarterback."
Just like that.
And just like that, I played. That was the last time I didn't play quarterback. I mean, that game, started that game and then played all through high school, Little Indians, college. That was it.
Bobby, to your benefit, you were a big kid, height-wise. I want to say 6'3", 6'4", so you had that going for you. When did you hit your growth spurt?
I was pretty much the tallest kid in the class all the way through, as long as I can remember. I said the only thing I wish I had a little bit more meat on my bones. So,
oh, yeah, you were thin.
So instead of getting beat up, I could have taken that beating a little bit better. But, yeah, always just about the tallest kid. I mean, other than that, I think I was just a steady grower, nothing really, shooting up or anything. But I was always the tallest kid in the class. I would say that.
Your high school days, talk about some of your memorable experience. Who were your coaches and some of your former teammates, and what was that like? And by the way, can I share a story with you? And I still curse Bobby for this. Dad gets his first high school head coaching job at Liberty in 1982. This is Bob Courtney's senior year, and we're going up against quarterback Bob Courtney, who I can tell you our game plan was keying on you. And one of Dad's former players with the Liberty Little Leopards throughout the 70s, your big fullback you guys had named Antoine Davis, a Girard native, and you hit a big pass. I swear there were 10,000 people at Arrowhead Stadium for that game, and you guys beat us. Bobby Courtney nails a big pass, and we end up losing 14-0. And thank you for breaking our hearts. I'll never forgive you for that.
Well, that big pass, it just happened on like the first or second play of the game. So
That's
that
all,
made things a little bit worse just to get things going. But, yeah, I remember that game. Beautiful day. Stadium, that year we had great crowds every year for that my senior year and my junior year. We weren't great. Our records weren't great, but we were competitive, had a chance to win the MVC title, the league championship title both of those years. Back in those days, not a lot of people made the playoffs, so that was difficult. But yeah, that was a great game. Your dad brought a lot of those people. He was kind of the coaching legend, and especially at Girard because he coached at McDonald, then he went to Liberty. So that was always a big rivalry, and that game was an exciting game, that's for sure.
Who was your head coach?
Great that game. Ed Klein was the head coach at Girard back in those days. We ran that wing T offense, which is the dinosaur offense now. A lot of fake, a lot of ball movement, a lot of bootlegs and play action passes, and that's what we hit on that long pass against Liberty there. That little bootleg to the right to Mike Mills. He was one of my favorite players. I still see him out today, and he can't wait to talk about Girard High School football back in the day.
Still
to this day,
I don't
unbelievable.
know. Dad, Bobby, might still have film of that, and that was not the most fun of. Hey, by the way, you got a cousin listening down in Frisco, Texas.
All over the
yeah,
country.
you got Latrobe, Pennsylvania, listening, and your entire family, which I find amazing. Okay, so you come out of Girard, you're a big kid, you got a strong arm, and we talked about your success. The recruiting process, who and what colleges are after Bob Courtney, or did you know all along, I want to stay home and I want to go to Youngstown State?
Well, I was must have again looked at, basically because of my size, by smaller schools. Division II, Division III, Westminster, Mount Union. I went to visited Toledo and YSU. Toledo was very interested. YSU was an interesting story. Gene Roche, who's a Girard native, he was a Girard Little Indian coach when I played. Mm-hmm. He was a coach at YSU. He came, first recruiting trip to my house. He came and visited. My dad coached him at St. Rose football when he played there. So it was a good Girard reunion. We sat around, talked for a little while. Toledo wanted me to come and walk on. YSU, Gene Roche called me a couple weeks later and said, we want to offer you a scholarship. And I said, I'm not waiting, to see what happens. Said, I'm coming to YSU. And that was it. I mean, it was pretty exciting, having Gene Roche, a Girard native, and like I said, my dad coached him when he was young at Girard, and then he coached me at Girard. So it was really it was something special. At least, my family thought that way.
Yeah, and you mentioned St. Rose, and what a great feeder program that was into the Girard school system at the junior high level, and great memories there with St. Rose's program as well. Yeah,
there was that it was so different back then. All the parochial schools had, all the parochial elementary schools had teams, and now that's all kind of faded by the wayside, which is kind of sad. But just the sign of times in this area, people leaving, the community's getting smaller or whatever. But it was very competitive. I mean, there were so many players, so many people that had an opportunity to play compared to now. So.
And then we mentioned you get to Youngstown State University. So for your first 3 years, from 83 through, 86?
Yeah,
83 through 85. 83, 84, and 85. Bill Narduzzi's your head coach.
Right.
Legendary coach in Youngstown State history. What was your relationship like with Doozer?
Doozer was one of the nicest guys you'd ever want to meet on and off the field. I mean, he'd get in your face a little bit, but for the most part, he's a super nice guy. He was like having another father down there. Offensively, our playbook was, when Narduzzi was there, we had a playbook of 2 or 3 inches thick. I mean, we ran every play under the sun.
Oh boy.
There were days of the game where we were putting plays in before the game started. Like while we're warming up, our offense coordinator would say, "Hey, I was watching this film last night. Saw this team run this. Looked like it was successful against this team." And we'd put it in, and we would run it in the game.
Wow.
We had more delay games, penalties, because it was so complicated, so big. I mean, it was just unbelievable the amount of plays that we had.
And Bobby, you think about it too, playing for Narduzzi and then the Ohio Valley Conference. Unfortunately for you, and I'm looking at your 4-year run with Youngstown. You were there for not some of the best years. I think some of your ex-teammates were Rick Shepis, who everyone knows. Gary Barber, right. I think, was there. Paul McFadden, I think you played ball with Paul. So there were some notable YSU athletes, and certainly from around the valley. But in 83, 4-7 with Narduzzi. 84, 7-4. That was the only winning season you'd have. 5-6 in 85. And then in 86, in Tress's first year, he even took his lumps in going 2-9, although a memorable, incredible victory against Akron. So you look back, and too bad, because what would come later on in the 90s with Tress would be something I'm sure you would have loved to have been part of.
Absolutely. But you know what? The memories and the guys that we played with down there, we had some guys, every year we had somebody playing in the pros from those teams. I mean, you mentioned Paul McFadden. We had Frank Picorni, who played for the Steelers for a couple of years. Johnny Good, who was drafted in the 3rd round by the St. Louis Cardinals, was a tight end, another outstanding player. But yeah, I was talking, the biggest difference between Tressel, when Tressel came in, and I was talking about Doozer, I said our playbook was 2.5 inches thick when Deuce was there. Trussell came in. We had about 10 plays.
Wow.
10 plays to the right, 10 plays to the left, 4 or 5 passing plays. That was it. And it was just that was the biggest difference is there was no delay game penalties. There was no mistakes. You knew exactly what you were going to do, how you were going to do it, how to operate, and that was the end of it. We lost a lot of games that year. We were 2-9. Like you said, we came back and beat Akron at the end of the year, which was unbelievable. Jerry Fowles coming from Notre Dame to coach Akron.
Oh, yeah.
But, we lost, I think, 4 or 5 games by less than 7 points. So every game was competitive. We were there. It was just 1 or 2 plays. And when Trussell was winning, it was the same way. It was 1 or 2 plays, except they made those 1 or 2 plays when they went to the national championship and all that stuff. They were making those plays to win the games, and we just couldn't do it when we were back then. So
Bobby,
that's the way it goes. That's the way the ball bounces.
Bobby Courtney with me, standout quarterback with Girard, and then with Youngstown State University from 83 through 86. Okay, you talked about the differences in the coaching philosophy and the simplification that Jim Tressel brought aboard right off the bat in 1986. Did you have any inkling, Bobby, at that time, and you're coming off a 2-9 campaign, and I remember there were some people questioning, hey, whether Tressel's the right guy for the job or not. In fact, Jerry Faust was, in fact, and it was verified by former SID information director Greg Goulas to me, of interest for the Penguins program. But did you have any inkling that Jim Tressel was going to go on to the legendary status that he would eventually have bestowed upon him?
Well, one thing I knew for sure is Youngstown always got good players. We never, even though we're 5-6 or 2-9, we were always there. We were close every year. We always had good players. We had players going to the NFL. So I knew the talent wasn't going to be the problem. And the way he coached us that first year, I learned more about the game, playing the game, analyzing the game, reading defenses, doing all that stuff in that 1 year, or in the first couple months, really, than I did, my 10 years prior to that. So I knew that we were going to do things right. The team was going to do things right. Did I think he was going to win 4 national championships? That's tough to say. But I knew that they were going to be good. And like I said, the next year I think they were 7-4, went to the playoffs, and then that just got the ball rolling. But again, he knows. He's just a great coach. Period. He knows what to do. He knows how to talk to people. He can get talent to get there. And when you get good players, you got a chance.
Absolutely.
There's no doubt about that.
And he's had legendary status, of course, with both Youngstown State and Ohio State. An amazing, I was at the Fiesta Bowl game and watched him. I was inside the stadium. I was on the field watching him lift that Crystal Trophy in just his second season with Ohio State. I'm like, pinch me. I cannot believe this guy that I sat in a room with and interviewed for so many years is now on this national stage of this prominence. It was unbelievable, and I couldn't have been happy for him. He's a longtime friend of mine. Let's talk about your career at Youngstown State. Now, there are 3 games that I kind of circled in your career that I thought were just amazing. It starts in 1984 at Morehead State. You threw for 266 yards, and then you hosted Eastern Kentucky the next year in '85, and you threw for 263 yards in that game. And then you had a game at Tennessee Tech in '85 where you threw for 249 yards. So Bobby Courtney was a force at the collegiate level as well.
Yeah, we've had, again, our offense was wide open, so opportunities to put up great numbers were always there. It's just a question of, are we going to turn the ball over? Are we going to get opportunities? Each one of those games that you talked about, I think the final score was 42-35, 35-31. So, they were shootouts, and again, our offense was geared that way. We put up a lot of points. We made a lot of mistakes. It hurt us sometimes, but we had plenty of opportunities to make plays. And again, I was thrown to guys like Frank Courtney, who played for the Steelers, Johnny Good, Rick Shepis, who tried out in the NFL, Mike Hardy, who just totally dominated people. Guys, Rick Bruno on the offensive line, guys, Jim, we had everything we needed. It was just a question of getting the job done. So, we did have some great games, and boy, those games were a lot of fun. I could think about that Morehead State game. We had so much fun that game. It was the last game of a couple seniors. I remember vividly Mike Hardy, who was, played at Mooney, dominating college player, fullback, called timeout. We're 4th and 1 on the 1-yard line. Called timeout. We go over, and I tell Coach Narduzzi, I said, Coach, Hardy wants to score a touchdown. So we scored he's like, okay. So he tells the offensive coordinator calls another play for somebody else. So I got to the huddle and I said, our center, Dave Zelenak, I said, what can we get Hardy in on? He says 10 dives. So I said 10 dive. So we call the play. Hardy dives over the top in the end zone for a touchdown. I go over, and I'm waiting for Doozer to start yelling at me because I changed the play. He goes, that is a great call. That's a great call. Oh. And I walked by, and I said, oh, thank God.
Also, Bobby, during your time at YSU, and you got to explain to me the situation because, of course, like I said, we're family connected. So I'm following you and what you're achieving at YSU. And it's funny because somebody on social media put your picture up. It's like, I didn't know you did all this stuff. Bob, some young timer, but you did, and he got all like wide-eyed about it. But Trenton Likes was there too. At the same time, and Trenton ended up becoming a record setter. He had a great career at YSU. So what was the story with you and Trenton Likes, both being different type quarterbacks, but both effective quarterbacks? What was going on there within the quarterback signal caller position at Youngstown during your campaign?
Well, we came in together as freshmen, and he had knee surgery, just cartilage removed or something coming into the season. So he got redshirted his freshman year. And I played just a couple plays, here and there, near the end of the year. Came in, competed for the job as, I was a sophomore, he was a freshman. He won the starting position. He played great that year. He got hurt at the end of the season, midway through the season or something. So I got to go in, and then we just kind of battled back and forth. I mean, he was a very talented player. He could throw the ball. He could run the ball. He's a smart player. And, we just went back and forth for those 2 or 3 years. When Tressel came in, I was going to be a senior. I was probably just an average player. Trenton, again, he had that year. He had the year coming next year. Just with Tressel, every quarterback that's been successful with Tressel, runs the ball great, throws the ball great, and Trenton fit that mold absolutely perfect.
How would
he went. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to ask you, how would you describe the differences in styles between you and Trenton Likes, your chief competition at quarterback?
I think he was more of, play by the numbers, drop back, read, make sure you're going to throw it to this guy that's open. Or I would drop back and say, hey, you know what, this guy's been cheating. We might be able to get a big play here, Shep. So, make sure you're looking because I'm going to throw it there. And I would force it in there. If I thought I could get in there, I'd chuck it in there. If it got intercepted, well, we'll get it back. We'll go back and, we'll play another down. And I think that was the biggest difference. He was, by the numbers, where I was probably too aggressive most of the time.
But Bobby, what makes a good quarterback? People don't realize I played the position, not at the level that you did collegiately, but I played the position. I've always said people don't realize how tough it is. It's how demanding. One, you got to lead the huddle. You got to be a leader. And then when things go wrong, they look to you. I mean, what is your demeanor? What is your attitude? Are you exuding confidence in that huddle? And then even more importantly, you've got to produce. And if something bad happens, you get sacked, somebody jumps offside, you throw an interception, you've got to put that behind you, brother, and you got to come back out and do it. But when you go back there and you've got all these bodies coming at you, and you're trying to see over the line, it's what I describe as utter chaos. And your ability to not hone in on a single receiver and check down if you have to, or look toward that secondary or third receiver and read those coverages. You don't have much time as that offensive line is battling to keep the D-line and the blitzing linebackers and maybe safety men away to make a decision. But do you agree with me on all that? And what sets the average quarterback apart from the great ones? The ability to do all that, and how difficult of a challenge is that?
Well, and I think that's the biggest difference between the greatest quarterbacks of all time and the average quarterbacks are those guys. They don't get deterred. No matter what the situation is, they think they're going to win and they're going to put the ball in the end zone. Tom Brady, he never. I mean, I'm sure he doesn't think anything but we're going to score every time we get the ball, and they're disappointed when you're not. And like you said, there's things going on in the huddle. There's coaches on the sidelines and the ability to get rid of all that and stay focused on what you need to do is what separates everybody apart. And if you make a mistake, you got to go on to the next play. You can't dwell on that. You can't put your head down. You can't, everybody's looking at you. So if you got your head down, chances are everybody else is going to have their head down. You just got to keep moving forward. You got to keep playing. Confidence all the time.
Yeah,
you got to have it.
No doubt about it.
If you lack that, you are done before you even walk on the field.
Boy, that's true.
you got no chance.
That's true, and you got to have that confidence and that
Absolutely.
ability to forget a bad thing and then put it behind you. So you get done at Youngstown State, and this I find totally fascinating. And I don't even know how you did this and pulled this off. So you got to share this story with us. You ended up playing professionally after college and after with Jim Tressel in 1986. In 1987, you go to Europe and you play in England with Nottingham, and I got photos up of you on social media with you at quarterback. What was that like? How'd you get there?
Well, that's a great story because I get back from Pal Joey's one night about 1 o'clock in the morning, and my roommate's sitting there, and he says, you got to call Bill Durkin. He called you. He said, it's an emergency. You got to call him. He doesn't care what time you get home. You got to call him. Bill Durkin's a good friend of mine, a long time. So I call him, and he says, did you read the USA Today? And I said, I didn't read it today. He says, there's an ad in there for people to go play football in Europe. And I said, yeah. He says, well, call this guy. See if you could get over there. I says, okay, whatever. You know, I don't do anything for a couple of days. So he calls me again. He says, you call that guy yet? And I said, I'll hang up. I'll call him right now. So I call him. He says, send a resume. It's some guy in Florida. He said, send me a resume, a couple pictures of yourself, and I'll give you a call. So I send it down there. I don't hear anything for like a week or anything. So I call the guy again. And he says, you really want to go over there? And I said, well, I don't know, whatever it is. Let's see what happens. So he calls me back in 2 days and says, okay, we got you a team. They're going to pay for you to fly over there. You're going to live with the guy who sponsors the team, and they'll pay you a little bit of money every week to live there.
My.
I says, all right, when do you want me to go? And he says, next week. I said, well, I got to get a visa. I got school still. You know, we're in the middle of the quarter at YSU. You know, I'm getting ready to graduate. So I says, I got to wait till like June 8th or something. He says, okay. So my last final was on like a Thursday or Friday. The next day, I was on a plane flying to London. These guys picked me up. The two guys from the team picked me up. We drive from London to Nottingham, which was about an hour. I get to this house. You know, I had slept. I flew, we left at 7 o'clock at night, so I got there like 7 o'clock the next morning. They wake me up at 10 o'clock to go to practice. You know, I don't even know where I'm at. I have no idea.
Oh, yeah.
The next day, I go to the game. They got a game Sunday morning. I get there like 10 or 11. I fall asleep in the locker room. Game starts. They're like, okay, you ready to go? I'm like, what are you talking about? They said, you're in.
Just like that.
Just like that. So I go, and I don't know I don't even know what they call their plays. I'm literally, it's like playing backyard football. I'm talking to these guys, okay, you do this, you do that. And we ended up losing like 42-35 to the first place team. And I was like, what the? So, I mean, it was great. I mean, I was there for 3 months, the whole summer. We played about 8 games. I got there like midway through the season. They wanted me to come back the following season, but I was getting ready to, I wanted to graduate from college. I needed 2 more quarters to graduate. And I said, listen, I'll come over there, but you got to give me like a job or something so I could work, so I could put something on my resume so when I graduate,
you could work for
playing football over here.
You could have worked for the Royal Palace, Bobby. You could have done a number of things.
Yeah. So I said, hey, just give me anything. At least, give me a letter of recommendation saying that I was an accountant or something over here so I could, get a job when I go back. And they said, well, we don't really want to get involved with that or whatever. And I said, that's the end of that. But it was awesome. Like I said, I was right in Nottingham, Robin Hood, went to all his hangouts, the castle. There's a pub there that opened in 1629. Oh, boy. It was right underneath the castle. It was just awesome. It was a 3-month vacation. I played a little bit of football. It was never a bad thing. So it was really an excellent time.
That's amazing. Bobby Courtney, I can't thank you enough for being our guest. 2,500 yards during his illustrious passing career with the Youngstown State University Penguins. And if you go back and look at the Penguin record books and some of the greats, Hess and Zetz and Ryan and Brungard and Cliff Stout, Clembera, Cochran, you will find Bobby Courtney's name in those record books. Trenton Lake's another one we mentioned up there with some of the greats. And I do want to mention one thing before I let you go. I understand your son Ethan is quite an athlete too. Where's he playing? Is he playing basketball?
He plays basketball. He's over at Penn State and Du Bois at one of the branch campuses. So he's having a good time. He's playing basketball. Hopefully he's getting better grades if he's out there listening, hopefully. But he's doing well.
That's great. Bobby, thank you so much, brother.
Great, no problem.
Hope to see you soon. That's Bobby Courtney, the legendary quarterback at Girard, and then went on to YSU. And how interesting I found it to be one of the differences he said was the playbooks between Narduzzi, who had this gigantic playbook, yay so thick, and then Jim Trussell got there and basically simplified everything. And things changed, and for the better for Youngstown State's fortunes, as we well know. And Jim Trussell would go on to 4 national championships, and that was Ray Isaac winning his first one in 1991.